I've been getting a ton of questions lately. Hey, is ICE deporting in Seattle? Or now that President Trump has taken office, is Seattle going to turn around? Is Seattle going to change its ways to basically work with the new administration? And the answer is ICE deportations are happening. Seattle will not work with the Trump administration because Seattle is fundamentally effed in the head because they're big blue, Democrat-run city, Democrat-run state. And, you know, these ICE arrests are happening, but like our article today, ICE Seattle just nabbed dangerous criminals. But liberal Seattle media remains mostly mum. They're not saying anything about it. Why is that? Because it doesn't really help their narrative of little children are being scooped up from school, or people are being taken out of their church service, being deported, even though they're completely legit citizens. That kind of thing isn't happening. Instead, we've got criminals with rapist pasts, sexual assault, nasty stuff. Those are the guys that are getting deported. And media, not just in Seattle, but across the country, is just kind of, nope, nothing going on here. Nothing going on here. But hey, we need to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to combat what ICE is doing, which is deporting criminal illegal aliens. Weird. Let's get into it. Here we go. We're going to start off with this Jason Rantz article. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 4 criminal illegal immigrants with convictions and/or charges related to sexual assault. Beautiful. Including against children. All right, that's not a good look, is it? Hey, the criminal illegal aliens that we're tossing, sexual assault against children. Yeah, that doesn't fit the Democrat narrative, does it? You likely won't hear much about it in left-wing Seattle media because it would conflict with the narrative they're helping create with Democrats. 47-year-old Mexican citizen named Pedro Garcia Lopez was arrested on January 30th. ICE Seattle says he's been charged with theft, lewd acts with a child under 14. And sexual battery. In Linden on that same day, 22-year-old Guatemalan Ruby Geronimo Cruz, who had already been convicted for DUI with reckless driving, has been charged with rape of a child. Let me repeat that. Rape of a child. So, how can you, with a good conscience, how can you say that these individuals need to stay in the United States and not be deported? You can't. You have zero argument. And yet, all of the attention is going to these big blue Democrat states and cities that are defending this conflict with ICE, saying that ICE is the bad guy. And they're literally tossing out somebody charged with rape of a child. Make that make sense. You know what I mean? Make that make sense. It's just, it's mind-blowing that this is going on. The day before, ICE Seattle nabbed 40-year-old Manuel de Jesus Zavala Martinez of El Salvador. He has a number of criminal convictions, including assault with sexual motivation and assault with a deadly weapon. On that same day, 29-year-old Indian Harpaar Singh, on his way to deportation, he was charged with assault with sexual motivation. These are all just a bunch of creeps going after children, aren't they? Why would we want to defend them? Well, it's this story. It's this narrative that whatever Trump does is bad. And then this reflects terribly on the Biden administration, who, I don't know if you know this, but was Democrat. And his running mate, Kamala Harris, she supported Black Lives Matter, and they want to eradicate borders. They want to, get rid of policing, get rid of the judicial system, get rid of judges, get rid of it all. Not really have another system in place, but just get rid of it, right? Yeah. How would that work out? What kind of society would that be? That's who Kamala Harris supported. And then she tried to work that back when she actually got a shot at being president. And it didn't work out well for Democrats, did it? No, not at all. Are these kids being absconded on their way to recess? Did ICE Seattle storm into a church to arrest an illegal immigrant during his prayer time? Were these innocent blueberry pickers CNN keeps telling us are being targeted by ICE under President Donald Trump? These are all question marks. Is this happening? No. No. Jason goes on to say, not really. Since the illegal immigrants who are actually being arrested are dangerous criminals or suspects, you won't read about it much in the news, hear about it on the radio, or see it on the local TV newscasts. You know what? And I have been watching for these stories because I'm like, hey, I know they're going on across the country, and I know we got a bunch of Looney Tune, criminals here in Washington State, because why wouldn't we? It's a haven for protecting criminal illegal aliens. If they cover it at all, they're too busy reporting on news that isn't actually happening. I mean, that's what we've got going on in California, right? Gavin Newsom just put aside $50 million to support lawsuits against the Trump administration for just this sort of thing. We need to combat the Trump administration for getting rid of the bad man and throwing him out of the country. We need to really get on top of that and work out something where we, doesn't allow the feds to deport criminal illegal aliens. Why are Democrats so hell-bent on this storyline of keeping the bad man in society? Why is that so important? It's an excellent question, isn't it? Seattle media is hard at work covering Democratic lawmakers declaring that they will stand up to ICE and protect our vulnerable migrant communities. Well, they're not deporting the vulnerable migrant communities. They're deporting the criminal illegal aliens. Yeah. These aren't people without a history. These are criminals. Deport. Criminals. Deport. It's pretty basic. King 5 spotlighted Governor Bob Ferguson. That guy is just terrible. Media stunt announcing he was protecting kids from ICE. King 5, however, didn't bother to mention that kids aren't being targeted by ICE. Have you heard of one child that's been deported? One. Have you heard of one? And you won't. You know why? They're not deporting them. They're not deporting them. They mentioned arrests, though. They didn't mention those arrested are criminals. They did manage to make room for resources to help illegal immigrants stay in this country unlawfully. That's what they're doing. That's what Washington State is doing. And ICE is still getting it done. They're still getting it done, along with the help from DEI and everybody else in between. Seattle Times wrote a lengthy piece on what to know about immigration in Washington, but didn't mention criminal illegal immigrants are being targeted. Why is that? Doesn't fit the narrative. Doesn't fit their story. They're nonsense. Too lazy to do any actual reporting, the staff put out a call to locals to send in tips. Hey, send in tips. If somebody's been deported that you know, preferably a child, or somebody in church, or somebody in school, give us that tip. It will help them look into how the Trump administration's immigration policies are affecting people in the greater Seattle area and in Washington State. So here's how I would say that the Biden-Harris administration impacted my life here in Washington State. My son Brennan died of a fentanyl overdose February 20th. Maybe it's the 19th or 20th, 2023. Drugs that are manufactured, chemicals manufactured in China, shipped to Mexico, and the cartels just bringing them across a wide open southern border. Wide open southern border. Democrats didn't give a shit. Brought in 20 million illegals into the country. A lot of these are drug dealers. A lot of these are drug runners, human trafficking, sex trafficking, and they're criminals. That is how, criminal illegal immigrants are impacting Washington for me. My son is dead and he ain't coming back. Just because Trump got elected doesn't mean my son is coming back. He's not coming back. So moving forward, I would like to see as many of the people that are responsible for this type of activity get deported. Throw them out. I think that's fair. I've got skin in the game. My 27-year-old son will forever be 27. Because of directly policy from the Biden-Harris administration. Washington State, just terrible. They could point out that we benefit from a child rapist being arrested and deported, but then they'd have to be honest about what's happening. And that's the truth. My son's dead. Kids are being raped. You got a bunch of Looney Tune criminals running around that are illegal that have been allowed to run around. I mean, day one, the Biden administration stopped building the wall, enacted 94 executive orders, got rid of that Remain in Mexico policy, and just started abusing the heck out of the parole policy, which was meant for, people coming from countries like Ukraine, where you've actually got a war going on, people displaced by that, in homes blown up, whatever. Hey, I need to immigrate. Can I come in? Come on in. Yep. And we'll release you based on parole, based on knowing your background and all that stuff. But the Biden administration just let people in willy-nilly. I mean, the one app, Customs and Border Protection, their one app, all you had to do is just basically set up a time on the app. And when your time came up, you came into the United States and they just let you in based on parole. No vetting, no nothing, just no nothing. So why the dishonest ICE Seattle coverage? TV, radio, online, and newspaper outlets will happily quote a Democrat feigning outrage over ICE arrests and deportations, but the journalists never seem interested in the follow-up question about why it's problematic for ICE Seattle to arrest child rapists and other dangerous criminals. It seems like that should be celebrated, doesn't it? I've done a bunch of podcasts on it. I mean, it's happening. It's happening. And you know what? Everybody's like, oh, yeah, good Lord. Rapist raped a kid? Good Lord, that's not good. Let's just ignore it. Yeah. ICE is bad, though. Orange Man bad. ICE is bad. DEA bad. Terrible, terrible. When you realize local media is overrun with left-wing partisans, their disinterest in telling you what's actually happening starts to make sense. Like Democrats, many in local media are also supportive of porous borders and choose not to differentiate between a criminal illegal immigrant and one who is trying to live the American dream. That's just bottom line, right? And this is what you get in Seattle. They want to make heroes out of actual felons like Fentanyl Floyd, like George Floyd. I mean, that's a real criminal. He's a felon, right? He's an actual felon. And make this make sense. It's absolutely nuts. Here's another story. Jeremy Harris, Como.
Yeah, Mary, ICE says that today's deportation flight was just business as usual, but it comes at a time when other federal agencies are being brought in to help enforce immigration laws. And in the 2 weeks since the Trump administration took over, we don't know exactly what impact that is having on the stats for immigration enforcement here in Washington. At Boeing Field, a nondescript flight bringing immigration detainees to Seattle while others board and are flown off. ICE saying this is part of weekly movements that resumed last fall after King County unsuccessfully tried to prevent the airport from being used for deportation flights.
King County. That's the county I live. It's got terrible leadership. Just so misguided. All their decisions are based on this massive amount of misguided compassion for things that don't exist. So they literally tried to block from our county airport. They tried to block, ICE and DEA and anybody else coming in to help out with the deportations, to help take the bad man out of our community. They wanted to keep the bad man in. They wanted to let child rapists run around. They wanted to let convicted criminals who don't belong in the country run around. Why is that? Why are they okay with that? I mean, that's the question of the hour, right? Tell me straight up to my face, as somebody who's lost my son, how this makes sense with this border policy. It doesn't. It's terrible.
While we saw dozens of people in custody, we do not know how many of them were arrested here in Washington, or how many arrests ICE has made since the Trump administration took over last month with a promise of mass deportations.
Good.
Much of what we do know about arrests in Washington has come from the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is posting notable arrests on social media, including a rape suspect who they took into custody this week.
The last couple of weeks have brought DEA a new tool in our toolkit.
How are things different now for your agents than they were before the new administration?
The DEA's focus on fentanyl hasn't changed. What has changed is this immigration authority that DEA now possesses gives us another tool to combat fentanyl trafficking.
Special Agent in Charge David Reams of DEA Seattle says in the 2 weeks since the Trump administration opened the door for all DOJ agencies to enforce Title VIII immigration laws, his agents have been able to target known drug offenders who are in the country illegally.
A lot of the couriers involved in drug trafficking organizations are illegally present in the United States. Many of the mid-level and senior leadership of DTOs are also illegally present in the United States.
So the people that brought the drugs into the country are illegal. The ones that brought the drugs into the country that killed my son, they're illegal. And now, because we have a new administration in charge, they're given the green light. Hey, you can actually do your job. What a shocker. I mean, what an absolute turn of events to have criminal organizations being gone after by our government. I mean, what a concept. What a concept. I mean, and yet if you live in a place like this in Seattle or King County, you know what you hear? Oh, and this is a terrible time. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. What's the future hold? You're having criminal illegal aliens who rape children tossed, and you're worried about things getting worse? What is wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? Mentally challenged, right?
ICE leadership nationwide has said they are taking a worst first approach, meaning they're going after known criminal offenders. Highlighted some of those arrests, including at least 4 wanted sexual assault suspects taken into custody and now facing removal here in Western Washington. But again, we still have questions about the scope of it, how many, what enforcement activities have they been doing, and those are answers that we hope to get sometime soon. Reporting live in Seattle, Jeremy Harris, KOMO News.
Based on immigration policy or another topic.
So here's the mentally challenged things that, my state is doing. Got Bob Ferguson. He signs an executive order to support children if parents arrested by ICE. Why? They're not doing that. What, Bob? They're not doing that. That's not happening. That is not happening. They're actually tossing people that have raped kids. So there's that. There's that whole notion, right? That whole notion. Washington State Governor Bob Ferguson signed an executive order in Seattle on Monday that creates a rapid response team to swoop in and support children and their families. How about when they were being raped? How about when the children were being raped? Where was that support team for the kids that were just taking it in the backside while the illegal immigrant criminals are raping them? Where was that support? So, but instead, this is after the fact. That's already happened. And now you want to have your response team swoop in and support children and their families if mom or dad are being arrested by immigration, which isn't happening. It's not happening. Not happening. But hey, let's pretend anyway. Let's just pretend. Let's pretend that's happening, and let's go ahead and do this thing where we got a rapid response team to swoop in. Family separation and rapid response team. Why would you need that when they're going after criminals? Yeah, how long can this charade last? How long can this nonsense go on? Family separation rapid response team will operate under Washington's Department of Children, Youth, and Families. What about the preventing children from being raped in Washington's Department of Children, Youth, and Families? What about that? Where's that? Where's that order? Where's that executive order? It doesn't exist because that's not what we're doing. We're letting illegals come in the country and boof our children and pretend that they're taking somebody that they aren't out of the country. Ferguson signed the order inside the 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 Cultural Center in Seattle, center run by 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪, a nonprofit, yada, yada, nobody cares. We will stand up for your rights. We'll protect your freedoms, just not while your children, while they're being raped. That's central to who we are, and we will continue doing that, Bob Ferguson said. Standing up for the children's rights? Oh, never mind. For the illegal criminal aliens that are being deported. That's who Washington, that's who King County is going to stand up for. It's totally backwards, totally backwards. ICE raids across country result in thousands arrested. Interesting, right? Interesting. Most of those arrests happened in Chicago, Miami, and New Jersey. According to the Seattle Times, Monday, 2 people were detained in Sunnyside in Yakima County, Washington. Yakima County has a ton of criminal activity. You got a ton of drugs being run there. During his speech, Ferguson said he has been preparing for a year to defend against policies against any Trump administration policies that he believes violate state or federal law. Is it not state or federal law to not have your children sexually assaulted? Is that not the law? I mean, are we not going there? Because that's happening, but you're not protecting against that. Part of the planning, Ferguson said, was studying Project 2025. Well, how about actually preventing some of the drugs coming across that southern border? How about preventing some of the drugs coming into Washington State that killed my kid? What about that? How about we focus on that instead of this just ridiculousness? If your parents or your siblings are being deported, which just clearly, by all reports, is not happening. Last week, Brown sued Trump in federal court in Seattle over that order, while senior U.S. District Court Judge 𝗪𝗠𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 issued a temporary restraining order in place until the case could go to trial. I mean, you just got a bunch of ridiculous stuff going back and forth on issues that are just simply not an issue. Here's ICE. Here's their kind of statements. There's a guy, he likes to rape children. This guy too over here, is that the same guy? I don't know. You can't really tell because, one child rapist looks like another, don't they? So, here's those folks that were arrested. These are not good people. These are literally not good people. They're terrible people. Members of the public with information regarding child sex offenders can report crimes or suspicious activity by dialing the ICE tip line. Why do we never get those tip lines with any of these stories? Instead, we get this support for imaginary people being deported. That's what we get. If you see this happening in your community, please reach out to 1-800-DEFEND-A-RAPIST. Right? I mean, I don't see it any other way. It's just absolutely mind-blowing to me. It's just like, what are you guys doing? What are we even thinking about here? Yeah, that's what I have to deal with here in Washington State. I mean, it's just people that are like, they're not there. The reality is not there because what they're defending against doesn't exist. Make it make sense. You can't. But here's the flip side. Here's the bright side. I got podcasts for days, weeks, months, years. And I think people see through this. People do see through this. They don't want to admit it. Like, oh, geez, all these rapists, what are they doing? Where'd they come from? Let's not think about that. Let's not go down that crazy train. The 20 million illegals were let into the country. Let's not go there because, we need to ignore that fact. And then we need to focus on, what is Orange Man Bad doing today? Somebody just sent me a text and said, Trump outlawed men participating in women's sports. I mean, that shouldn't even be a thing. That's how far off center our politics have gotten. They went so far left, and now Trump's trying to bring it back to the center. Hey, boys shouldn't be competing against girls. I mean, no kidding, right? I mean, absolutely no kidding. That's where this whole notion of you can pretend to be a woman if you want. That's fine. If you want to pretend, if you want to con yourself that you're something that you're not, hey, if you want to pretend you're a dog or a cat, whatever. But don't expect me to believe that. And certainly don't expect me as a parent to think it's okay for boys to compete against girls because it's 100% not okay. Just like supporting child rapists. Not okay. I think that's a pretty easy position. I think most people are going to go, I can't really defend against that. And you can't. That's the bottom line. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one and guarantee there's going to be a next one. So let's go. Thanks again. Bye for now.